Chapter 1116, True God Lightning Tribulation. In a forbidden area of the Dark Moon Lord Dynasty's camp, Sacred King Samsara holds the technique to combine the powers of God descendants, and 4 of them are from the Great God Lord Dynasty. There's also a unique existence, Zhaofeng. We must get rid of either Sacred King Samsara or Zhaofeng. At this moment, those that were present were the experts that had survived the incident in the God Corpse. The non-humans had grim expressions as they spoke their views. After the journey to the God Corpse, the 2 lower dynasties were both heavily injured and wouldn't be able to fight one another for the next couple hundred years. However, the Dark Moon Lord Dynasty didn't dare to fight the Great God Lord Dynasty anymore. The power of the God descendants had scared them. It is very difficult to deal with Sacred King Samsara, a Sacred King said. Everyone knew the ability of the eyes of Samsara. Although he was only a Sacred King, his strength was comparable to normal demigods. Most importantly, the Sacred King Samsara's ability to survive was very strong. We need to think of a thorough plan to deal with Zhaofeng, a demigod from the Dark Capital cult said. Now that the 2 lower dynasties were not at war against each other, it would be very hard for the non-humans to enter the center of the Great God Lord Dynasty. Humph. It's not as if there aren't people in the Great God Lord Dynasty that don't want to kill Zhaofeng. I believe they won't reject our help. Demigod Dark Dragon revealed a deadly smile. Several dozen thousand miles away, Zhaofeng created a cave underground. If only I was able to obtain something that could contain God Tribulation Lightning. Zhaofeng was only able to obtain a very small amount of God Tribulation Lightning when he duplicated the demigod head, so it wasn't very worth it. Thus, he was trying to find a new item that could store God Tribulation Lightning. After sitting down, Zhaofeng circulated the 10,000 Divine Thoughts technique and started to consolidate his strength. During the trip to the God Corpse, with the help of the God Blood and the ability of his God Eye, Zhaofeng's aspects had all become stronger. Although no signs of his foundation becoming unstable had appeared, Zhaofeng still needed to familiarize himself with his power. Only then would his battle power reach its peak. The first of his thoughts inspected the upgraded God's Spiritual Eye. The power of the God's Spiritual Eye's transparency ability, Soul Eye bloodline techniques, soul defense, duplication ability, and more were all completely different from before. The second of his thoughts focused on cultivating the divine forming technique. Once he succeeded in cultivating the divine forming technique, Zhaofeng would have true divine sense. Not only would his strength increase, he would also be able to use his divine weapon, the ancient God Seal. Zhaofeng used the third thought to inspect the remaining power of the God Blood in his right index finger. At this point, Zhaofeng had escaped danger. He was thinking about whether to use this drop of God Blood for cultivating or whether to turn it into an offensive technique. Just by sitting there, the drop of God Blood was enhancing his finger, his palm, and even the rest of his body. It was increasing his life force. Zhaofeng used the remaining thought to inspect what was happening in the outside world and to communicate with the forces of the Ocean Smoke Pavilion on the battlefield. Bai Kuang Yue, send some people to search for clone secret techniques. Zhaofeng communicated with Bai Kuang Yue through the Dark Heart Seal. I need to plan for my second clone. Zhaofeng was slightly excited. If he succeeded in forming the second clone the way he thought, the second clone would have the cultivation of a quasi-sacred lord at the least, so he wouldn't need to spend so much time and effort to cultivate like the first clone. After giving the order, Zhaofeng used his transparency ability to inspect the situation of Sin Wuhang 10,000 miles underground. Zhaofeng managed to familiarize himself with his power roughly 3 days later. His sacred lightning body had reached the late stages of the 6th level, so all attacks below the level of Sacred King were unable to injure him. His soul intent had also become stronger, and Zhaofeng decided to test out the ability of his left eye. Now, even top Sacred Kings like Sacred King Dark Screen aren't my match. Zhaofeng evaluated after familiarizing himself with every aspect. This is? Zhaofeng's powerful soul intent found a weird soul aura on the surface of his lightning soul body. This is the power of Samsara? Since Zhaofeng had touched the origin power of Samsara before, he was familiar with this power. Why is Sacred King Samsara's soul aura on me? Zhaofeng was puzzled. Right at this moment, a terrifying destructive pressure descended on heaven and earth. The true God lightning tribulation is about to start. Zhaofeng was excited. At the same time, All the experts of both lord dynasties on the battlefield opened their eyes and looked toward the sky. Boom. 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 Heaven and earth became dark as giant bolts of white lightning started to move like an ancient beast. They radiated terrifying auras and produced extreme sounds as if they were a part of heaven itself. Everything within several 100 million miles was suppressed, all living beings were pressured and unable to move. Boom. A giant bolt of white lightning descended and seemed to rip a hole in the world of darkness. The laws of destruction flashed across the white lightning and destroyed everything they touched. Boom. Pang. The ground of the battlefield started to rip apart. What terrifying God tribulation lightning power! Zhao Feng was stunned. He could still feel the devastating power of God tribulation lightning even though it was concentrated 10,000 miles underground. Normal demigods wouldn't be able to withstand this power. Of course, Xin Wuhang wasn't normal. Zhao Feng's gaze turned downward and locked onto Xin Wuhang. At this moment, Xin Wuhang stood with his hands behind his back. A faint light flashed around him as he raised his head and looked up. He so calm? Zhao Feng's heart jumped. It was as if Xin Wuhang didn't even care about the true God lightning tribulation. Zhao Feng's expression suddenly froze. Xin Wuhang reached out with his right hand and gently waved it, blocking the terrifying bolt of God tribulation lightning. Boom. Bam. Lightning flashed in the underground world. Xin Wuhang's true strength has probably exceeded normal true gods already. Zhao Feng analyzed with shock. Boom. 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 The second bolt of lightning descended after the first, and it was even stronger. However, Xin Wuhang still managed to block the God tribulation lightning easily. Boom. 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 Several more bolts of lightning descended before the black clouds in the sky suddenly increased. Boom. This time, 3 bolts of lightning descended at the same time. Furthermore, the power of these 3 bolts of lightning was even more terrifying. They ripped space apart. It was obvious that the power of this God tribulation lightning had exceeded the limits that this dimension could withstand. Underground, Xin Wuhang's eyes focused as he summoned a surge of divine power from the depths of his body. Boom. 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 Heaven and earth shook as the ground shattered. All the experts of both lord dynasties on the battlefield, including the demigods, were completely dumbfounded. Some of the demigods that had obtained great fortune in the god corps that were planning to break through to the heavenly divine realm were full of shock and fear. How is the God tribulation lightning so terrifying? A demigod from the Grand Imperial Hall was in awe and fear. It should be because the strength of this senior is too strong, so he summoned a unique God tribulation. Demigod Dragon Emperor said in shock. The black clouds of God tribulation lightning in the air started to slowly fade, revealing a giant crater several thousand miles wide. Arcs of lightning radiated a terrifying law of destruction across the crater. Who tilde? Some of the demigods of both lord dynasties started to move toward the area where the God tribulation lightning had descended. What terrifying power of God tribulation lightning! The sacred kings and demigods of the 2 lord dynasties could only stay above the crater and were unable to delve further. Some sacred kings used this chance to sit down and refine their sacred bodies with the power of God tribulation lightning. No one noticed that a dark golden human figure suddenly appeared in the center of the God tribulation lightning 10,000 miles underground. Boom. 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 The instant Zhao Feng appeared, the remnant power of God tribulation lightning crushed toward Zhao Feng. Wang tilde Wang Wang. Zhao Feng activated his sacred lightning body to block the remaining power of the God tribulation lightning within this dimension. This God tribulation lightning. What power? The resilience of Zhao Feng's sacred lightning body against lightning was very high, and it had been refined by the power of ancient lightning. However, at this moment, Zhao Feng felt that he couldn't withstand the remaining power of God tribulation lightning in this area. Boom. Zhao Feng activated the perfect Blood Devil Sun bloodline to increase the defense of his body. The power of God tribulation lightning started to dim, and Zhao Feng started to relax a little bit. I'll find a God tribulation lightning storage item first. Zhao Feng's eyes flashed. However, right at this instant, he saw a figure covered in divine light slowly approach him. Xin Wuhang. Zhao Feng was dazed. At this moment, Xin Wuhang had successfully passed through the God tribulation. His body was completely different from before after undergoing the God tribulation, and a weird power radiated from his body. Zhao Feng could roughly guess Xin Wuhang's background now. Brother Zhao, I will wait for you in the ancient desolate realm of gods. Sin Wuheng said calmly. You're that certain that I can break through to the heavenly divine realm? Zhao Feng smiled faintly. In reality, Zhao Feng was very curious. This was the second time Sin Wuheng had said this. Why did he hope Zhao Feng would go to the ancient desolate realm of gods so much? If it's you, I'm sure. Sin Wuheng said certainly. Shoo. Sin Wuheng opened his palm, and a white crystal floated toward Zhao Feng. This is? Zhao Feng's expression turned to shock. The amount of God tribulation lightning contained within this crystal was several times the amount of God tribulation lightning in the demigod head. Furthermore, the God tribulation lightning within this white crystal was purer and more powerful. This was a God tribulation lightning God crystal. Zhao Feng was slightly embarrassed to take such a big gift from Sin Wuheng. At this moment, Zhao Feng found that Sin Wuheng's body was slowly fading away, and a steady undulation of space appeared around him. Brother Sin, I want to ask you a question. Zhao Feng's eyes suddenly lit up as he thought of something. Is there any way to find the person who underwent samsara rebirth? Zhao Feng asked directly. He finally understood the first sentence of what the sixth sage said. The person that was the same as Lu Qin was probably Sin Wuheng. You should go ask Sacred King Samsara. Sin Wuheng said as his figure started to become transparent. But the person you are searching for might be right next to Sacred King Samsara. Apparently, the eyes of Samsara can obtain origin power of Samsara from the Samsara of heaven and earth by killing people that have been reborn through Samsara. The person you are searching for might be the person that Sacred King Samsara is searching for as well. Sin Wuheng completely disappeared from this world of lightning after saying that. Zhao Feng's expression changed dramatically, and a cold glint of light flashed through his eyes. Chapter 1117, Lu Qin's whereabouts. The person you are searching for might be right next to Sacred King Samsara. Apparently, the eyes of Samsara can obtain origin power of Samsara from the Samsara of heaven and earth by killing people that have been reborn through Samsara. The person you are searching for might be the person that Sacred King Samsara is searching for as well. Sin Wuheng disappeared from the continent zone, but what he said reverberated throughout Zhao Feng's mind. Sacred King Samsara. Zhao Feng's body radiated a very powerful killing intent. Before Sin Wuheng had undergone the God tribulation, Zhao Feng noticed a soul mark with the power of Samsara on his body. If Zhao Feng was correct, this should be the legendary mark of Samsara. The ability of the mark of Samsara was to recover the souls of the dead and pull them into the Samsara of death through the eyes of Samsara. In other words, Sacred King Samsara wanted Zhao Feng to die from the very start, then turn him into a Samsara immortal body. Most likely, the reason Sacred King Samsara didn't just kill Zhao Feng when they first met was because Sacred King Samsara wanted Zhao Feng to become stronger. That way, he would be able to obtain an even stronger Samsara immortal body when the time came. This means that the friendship from before was all fake. Zhao Feng had a cold expression as he remembered what the sixth warlock divine sage said: if you want to confirm the whereabouts of Lu Qin, you have to find the eyes of Samsara. What the sage said meant that Zhao Feng would be able to know the location of Lu Qin once he found the eyes of Samsara, not by asking him. Why did I understand that only now? Zhao Feng said with regret and hatred. Qin. Kuan. Zhao Feng's eyes were tough. Sacred King Samsara had the eyes of Samsara and obviously cultivated the Tao of Samsara, but when Zhao Feng met Lu Qin, he didn't feel any power from the Tao of Samsara in her. This meant that Sacred King Samsara didn't think of her as a true disciple. Adding on what Sin Wuheng said, Zhao Feng was sure that Lu Qin was Lu Qin. The two peerless figures in white in his memories started to combine. Zhao Feng didn't think that he would have already met Lu Qin but missed the chance. Now that he thought about it, Sacred King Samsara definitely knew that Lu Qin was the person that Zhao Feng wanted to find, but he hid it. This also made sense given what Sin Wuheng said. Sacred King Samsara wanted to use Lu Qin to increase his own strength. Sacred King Samsara only just left the god corpse. He shouldn't kill Lu Qin so quickly. Zhao Feng's expression suddenly changed. He had met Sacred King Samsara twice, so he could feel that Sacred King Samsara's strength hadn't increased by much. This meant that Lu Qin was still alive. Zhao Feng glanced toward the sea of lightning before waving his left arm in anger and disappearing in a flash of silver. After understanding everything, Zhao Feng couldn't just stay here and use the God tribulation lightning. The next instant, Zhao Feng appeared on the battlefield. At this point in time, most of the people were gathered around the barren grounds of the god tribulation. The demigods and sacred kings were already starting to head toward the depths. Zhao Feng disappeared the instant he came out. He still hasn't given what he promised me. Kun Yuan swore in anger and activated his golden Kun sacred body. His resistance against god tribulation lightning was very strong, so he was able to enter further than all the other demigods present. Brother Feng, where are you going? Zhao Yufei suddenly felt uneasy. Wang Wang. A faint ripple of golden light swept over the area, but Zhao Feng didn't find any sign of Sacred King Samsara. Bai Kuang Yue, gather all the intel agents and find the whereabouts of Sacred King Samsara. Search all the places that Sacred King Samsara went before he entered the god corpse. Zhao Feng communicated with Bai Kuang Yue directly through the Dark Heart Seal. In the past, Zhao Feng could only rely on luck to find Sacred King Samsara since he always hid himself and was very low-key, but now since Sacred King Samsara had appeared in the god corpse, there must have been traces, and Zhao Feng could use these tracks to find his location. Understood. Bai Kuang Yue, who was also gathered around the barren ground of the god tribulation, immediately retreated with all her subordinates. She could tell how important this issue was from Zhao Feng's tone. Shoo. Zhao Feng used the misty spatial world and left the battlefield. At a certain moment, Bai Kuang Yue sent some information to Zhao Feng through the Dark Heart Seal. Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly before returning to normal, and he continued on his way. A day later, Zhao Feng arrived at a simple wooden room that was located within the depths of a forest full of green trees. In front of the wooden room was a gentle stream. A white-clothed young girl had once been here playing the qin. This was the place that Zhao Feng met Lu Qin. Qin, where are you? I want to hear another song. Zhao Feng murmured gently as his emotions started to boil. Zhao Feng's thoughts started to soak into this place, and the power of illusions appeared around him. At this moment, Zhao Feng recreated the scenery of him meeting Lu Qin with just his memories. A girl in white slowly appeared from the stream ahead of him. She held an ancient qin, and an elegant music started to sound. Boom. Zhao Feng suddenly destroyed the illusion. I must find Qin. She's still in danger and might die any moment. Zhao Feng's expression shook as he forced out his emotions. Sacred King Samsara. Zhao Feng said through gritted teeth. That's right. The mark of Samsara. Zhao Feng's eyes flashed. The mark of Samsara that Sacred King Samsara had left behind was still in his body. The reason why Zhao Feng hadn't wiped out this mark of Samsara immediately was because he was scared of Sacred King Samsara finding out and going on guard against him. Sacred King Samsara could sense Zhao Feng's rough location with this mark of Samsara, but Zhao Feng could also use the mark of Samsara to find Sacred King Samsara's location. If used this method, that would reveal that Zhao Feng knew about the mark of Samsara since Sacred King Samsara would notice Zhao Feng approaching. However, at this point, Zhao Feng didn't care about that anymore. Shoo. Zhao Feng's consciousness entered the depths of his soul and was soon able to find the mark of Samsara by relying on the powerful ability of his left eye. Who? Zhao Feng released his soul power to awaken the mark of Samsara. Wang tilde. A resistive force came from the other side of the mark of Samsara. At this instant, Zhao Feng's consciousness sensed a faint soul disturbance at a certain location that resonated with the mark of Samsara within Zhao Feng's lightning soul body. Found you. A deadly look flashed through Zhao Feng's eyes as he started to take action. Sacred King Samsara had definitely sensed something the moment Zhao Feng used the mark of Samsara to find him, so Zhao Feng needed to move as quickly as possible so that Sacred King Samsara couldn't escape. Whoosh. Zhao Feng waved his armed guard and disappeared amongst a layer of silver light. Zhao Feng moved across an entire province after using the misty spatial world twice. It's in this province. Zhao Feng could sense Sacred King Samsara's rough location through the mark of Samsara. Wang tilde. Zhao Feng used the lightning wings flying technique and sped across heaven and earth. Sacred King Samsara has already sensed my actions and might have already left his original position. Zhao Feng had a grim expression. Let's try again. Zhao Feng's consciousness entered the depths of the soul and decided to touch the mark of Samsara once more. It's. Zhao Feng's expression froze as he stood still. A gray figure slowly appeared before Zhao Feng a while later. Sacred King Samsara. Zhao Feng's expression was cold as killing intent radiated from him. Zhao Feng, Why are you in such a rush to find me? Sacred King Samsara looked at Zhao Feng and revealed a faint smile. Did you know that the person I was searching for was Lu Qin from the beginning? Zhao Feng asked in a low tone. That's right, but she's my target, so I can't let you take her away. Sacred King Samsara revealed a decisive look. Sacred King Samsara had used the ability of his right eye to find 4 Samsara reborn. The death of the first Samsara reborn allowed him to break through to the mystic light realm. The death of the second allowed him to become a sacred king. Sacred King Samsara didn't find any opportunities that could allow him to break through to the heavenly divine realm in the God Corpse, so he could only use the third Samsara reborn, Lu Qin, to assist his breakthrough to the heavenly divine realm. Lu Qin's soul contained powerful laws of samsara, and she was very talented in the Tao of life as well. If it wasn't for the fact that the heavenly divine realm was such a big gap, Sacred King Samsara wouldn't want to kill his third disciple. The fourth Samsara reborn that Sacred King Samsara had found was Sin Wuheng, but Sacred King Samsara always felt as if there was a profound power stopping him from approaching Sin Wuheng. Well, you are my target, so you must die. Zhao Feng had a grim expression. He definitely wouldn't let Sacred King Samsara off after he admitted everything. You can't kill me with your strength. Sacred King Samsara said confidently. However, even though he said this, Sacred King Samsara was still somewhat wary of Zhao Feng after the battle in the God Corpse. It didn't matter though, because Lu Qin was about to die, and his strength would increase dramatically. It was impossible for Zhao Feng to be his match. How would I know without trying? Zhao Feng snickered coldly. Do you not want to know the whereabouts of Lu Qin? Sacred King Samsara laughed smugly. Lu Qin was very talented in the Tao of life and could detect danger, but Lu Qin was talented only in this aspect. Sacred King Samsara had never let Lu Qin cultivate any other techniques from the Tao of life or let her read any knowledge about the Tao of life, so Lu Qin's usage of the Tao of life was very normal. Sacred King Samsara had left a Samsara immortal body near Lu Qin before he entered the God Corpse. Of course, Sacred King Samsara didn't tell the Samsara immortal body what the mission was earlier, but at this moment, Sacred King Samsara had given the order to the Samsara immortal body to kill Lu Qin. There was a pretty stream near the edge of the province that Zhao Feng was in. Next to the stream was a cave. The setup within the cave was the same as a normal family. At this moment, a snow-white figure walked out from the cave. What should I do? The sense of danger is becoming stronger and stronger, but Master told me to wait here for him. Lu Qin's expression was becoming impatient. Chapter 1118, Fighting Against Sacred King Samsara. So Sacred King Samsara's true intention was to kill this woman. The Emperor of Death quickly flew toward the stream. Whoosh! The Emperor of Death's expression changed dramatically after scanning the place with his divine sense. Master, Lu Qin's not here. The Emperor of Death immediately messaged Sacred King Samsara. What? Follow my directions and kill her. Sacred King Samsara's impatient tone sounded in the Emperor of Death's soul. Sacred King Samsara had obviously left a mark of Samsara on Lu Qin's body, so it was extremely easy for him to find her location. The Emperor of Death then headed in a certain direction as he followed Sacred King Samsara's guidance. Lu Qin was flying quickly across the sky in the distance. There seems to be a glint of hope in that direction. Did Master return? Lu Qin's eyes were lost, and she turned her head around a while later. Hee, Lu Qin, where do you think you're running to? The Emperor of Death descended as he released a terrifying intent. Lu Qin was completely suppressed by the Emperor of Death and unable to move. It was as if she could turn into ashes at any moment. Emperor of Death, why do you want to kill me? Lu Qin said in fear and shock. Ha ha ha, if you really want to help your master, you should just commit suicide. The Emperor of Death laughed. Impossible. Lu Qin didn't believe that the Emperor of Death was being ordered to kill her by her master. Why would her master, who had raised her for more than a dozen years, send someone to kill her? An accident must have befallen Master, and the Emperor of Death escaped Master's control. Whoosh! 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 Right at this moment, several black figures flew out from behind Lu Qin. I finally managed to catch up. A cold and wicked male exclaimed. When Lu Qin saw this male, her mind suddenly shook. Wasn't this the male from her dreams? Although the appearance was slightly different, Lu Qin felt like this person was the person that she had been seeing in her dreams. Zhao Feng? Wait, no. The Emperor of Death's expression changed. Although this person looked exactly like Zhao Feng, the latter's aura and cultivation were completely different. Kill him. Zhao Wang's eyes were cold as he stared at the Emperor of Death before looking deeply at Lu Qin. Yes, Grand Elder. Several elders from the Dark Ghost clan took out a ghost dowry and started to use it. Humph, you're courting death. The Emperor of Death released a terrifying aura. He had the Eye of Death and a Samsara immortal body, so why would he be scared of a few emperors? Furthermore, after the battle in the God Corpse, the abilities of his Eye of Death were stronger than ever. We'll see who the one courting death is. Zhao Wang snickered coldly as he charged forward. Black Hole of Death. Zhao Wang circulated his right eye as he locked onto the area around the Emperor of Death. Whoosh! 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 A strong surge of death power formed a black ball that radiated a terrifying suction force as it flew toward the Emperor of Death. The Black Hole of Death was a brand new secret technique that Zhao Wang had created according to the supreme techniques of the Dark Ghost clan and the Gaze of Death. Of course, Zhao Feng had also helped. Shoo! 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 On the other side, the elders of the Dark Ghost clan controlled the ghost dowry and trapped the Emperor of Death inside it. The Eye of Death. The expression of the Emperor of Death turned crazy. Wasn't this the Eye of Death that Zhao Feng had stolen? Give me back my Eye of Death. Elsewhere, the battle between Zhao Feng and Sacred King Samsara had already started. Next to Sacred King Samsara was a Sacred King level Samsara immortal body. Sacred King Samsara, didn't you want to tell me the whereabouts of Lu Qin? Zhao Feng couldn't help but smile. In reality, Bai Kuan-Yue had quickly found the various places where Sacred King Samsara stayed before he entered the God Corpse soon after Zhao Feng gave her the task. Coincidentally, the place in question was very close to the Dark Ghost clan, so Zhao Feng sent Zhao Wang to check. Zhao Feng could roughly guess where Lu Qin was by sensing the location of Sacred King Samsara through the mark of Samsara. However, because Zhao Feng also had a mark of Samsara on him, he didn't immediately go find Lu Qin in case Sacred King Samsara sensed it. Therefore, Zhao Feng headed toward Sacred King Samsara while Zhao Wang went to save Lu Qin. This was the first time Zhao Wang had come into play, and he was very useful. Zhao Wang was already very strong, and when the two lower dynasties were scouting out the God Corpse, Zhao Wang persuaded those that supported him in the Dark Ghost clan to make him the Grand Elder. After becoming the Grand Elder, Zhao Wang didn't hide anything anymore and used the resources that Zhao Feng gave him to cultivate crazily. He now had the strength of an unrivaled emperor. Zhao Wang's soul was split from Zhao Feng's, so he had a lot of potential. His soul had reached the level of a sacred lord long ago. The Eye of Death. It's you? Sacred King Samsara immediately understood after hearing what the Emperor of Death said. There was only one other person that had the Eye of Death. Zhao Feng, how dare you try to steal my disciple? Sacred King Samsara roared in anger. Wang. Black lines started to spin in Sacred King Samsara's left eye. Who? Black-robed figures started to appear one after another and surround Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly as he looked over them. 2 sacred kings, 4 late-stage sacred lords, and more than 10 early-stage sacred lords. Although he knew that Sacred King Samsara had many Samsara immortal bodies, the number and strength of them still shocked him. Shoo! Zhao Feng waved his left hand and summoned some helpers as well. Meow meow. The little thieving cat and the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly appeared. Next to them was Sacred Lord Myriad Forms and some sky-shaking golden apes, who had become Sacred Lords ages ago. Go! Zhao Feng exclaimed. Wang wang wang. Zhao Feng used the lightning wings flying technique and charged directly into the enemy forces toward Sacred King Samsara. Kill him! Sacred King Samsara roared. As long as Sacred King Samsara had time, he could create more and more Samsara immortal bodies. He had left many marks of Samsara on the Sacred Lords and Sacred Kings in the God Corpse. Many experts had also died in the fight against True God Tianfa. However, Sacred King Samsara had also used up a lot of his Samsara origin power while fighting and needed time to recover before he could turn those experts into Samsara immortal bodies. If Zhao Feng had come a while later, Sacred King Samsara was confident he could have killed Zhao Feng immediately. Boom. More than 20 Samsara immortal bodies started to attack Zhao Feng. Whoosh! Zhao Feng flew across the sky and tried to avoid the attacks of the two sacred kings. Peng! Peng! Bam! The attacks from the other Samsara immortal bodies landed on Zhao Feng, but they didn't even leave a mark on him. My sacred lightning body has reached the late stage of the 6th level. Attacks from anyone below the sacred king level aren't able to injure me. Zhao Feng was very confident in his sacred lightning body. At the same time, the sky-shaking golden apes and cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly quickly entered the battle and instantly suppressed the early-stage Sacred Lord Samsara immortal bodies. The little thieving cat and Sacred Lord myriad forms easily took care of the late-stage Sacred Lords. How is this possible? Your strength. Sacred King Samsara's expression changed dramatically and lost all color. He didn't expect Zhao Feng's strength to improve so fast or for his body's strengthening technique to be so profound. The attacks from so many Samsara immortal bodies were actually unable to do any damage to him. The two of you, stop him. Sacred King Samsara gave the order to the two Sacred King Samsara immortal bodies. At the same time, Sacred King Samsara started to circulate his intent to restrict Zhao Feng. The battle power of the eyes of Samsara themselves was very weak, but Sacred King Samsara was still a sacred king. Humph! Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as he released a surge of terrifying intent into the sky and knocked aside the intent of the three sacred kings. His soul intent has also reached the level of a sacred king. Sacred King Samsara was stunned once more. The reason why Zhao Feng broke through to the late stages of the mystic light realm so quickly was very likely due to the amount of resources he obtained in the God Corpse, but Sacred King Samsara didn't expect Zhao Feng's soul intent to be so strong as well. The God Corpse had many resources that helped one's cultivation and state of existence, but resources that helped the soul were extremely rare. Sky-destroying Sacred Lightning Palm. Zhao Feng circulated his fire of wind lightning sacred power and thrust out toward the two Sacred King Samsara immortal bodies. This brat's power is terrifying. The Great Gon Lord dynasty has such a fearsome prodigy? The two Sacred King Samsara immortal bodies were stunned. Boom. The two sacred kings had to use many techniques and team up to block Zhao Feng's attack. The power of God Tribulation Lightning? The expression of one Samsara immortal body turned to surprise. The parts of their bodies that were damaged by the power of God Tribulation Lightning were very hard to recover from even if they had Samsara immortal bodies. Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto Sacred King Samsara as a strong surge of eye intent appeared. Boom. A ball of transparent purple and gold lightning fire exploded in Sacred King Samsara's face. This technique contained a large amount of God Tribulation Lightning, so it was able to critically threaten even Sacred King Samsara's Samsara immortal body. Arg! Sacred King Samsara immediately cried out. At this moment, a necklace around Sacred King Samsara's neck started to blink, and it quickly helped Sacred King Samsara block the power of the Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame. A peak-tier heaven-grade soul-defending secret treasure. Zhao Feng's expression turned to shock. Soul-defending treasures were more precious than other treasures, and Sacred King Samsara's treasure would be very rare even in the continent zone as a whole. Whoosh! Sacred King Samsara quickly retreated several miles and pulled away from Zhao Feng. Although he had a soul-defending treasure, Zhao Feng's soul attacks contained the power of God Tribulation Lightning, which heavily damaged his treasure. Use the substandard God weapon and kill him. Sacred King Samsara said. Sacred King Samsara had also gained a lot in the God Corpse. Whoosh! A substandard God weapon appeared in each of the two Sacred King Samsara immortal bodies' hands. One was a golden white pearl of light that gave off a strong glow. Profound golden talismans floated within the pearl and radiated a faint wisp of divine power. The other substandard God weapon was a blue jade ruler. A watery vapor floated around the ruler and summoned the element of water from heaven and earth. Zhao Feng, since you saved Lu Qin, you can go die. Sacred King Samsara had a deadly expression. Chapter 1119, Start of Samsara. Zhao Feng, since you saved Lu Qin, you can go die. Sacred King Samsara had a deadly expression. Although he hadn't managed to kill Lu Qin, he could kill Zhao Feng if he used all his power. He would then slowly search for Lu Qin, and the result would be the same. Substandard God weapon? Zhao Feng's expression changed. He hadn't managed to cultivate the divine forming technique yet, so he was unable to use the ancient god seal yet. Zhao Feng had a substandard god weapon as well, but it was the misty spatial world, which was used for support. Therefore, Zhao Feng was extremely wary against Sacred King experts that had offensive substandard god weapons. Wang tilde. A golden white light shot out from the golden white pearl in one of the Sacred King's hand and released a faint wisp of divine aura toward Zhao Feng. The other Sacred King also waved the blue ruler in his hand. Boom. Boom. Countless green and blue whirlpools started to spin in heaven and earth. It was as if the entire area had turned into an ocean. In this blue and green whirlpool of water, Zhao Feng was heavily suppressed, and his ability to move was reduced. Zhao Feng had the ice-water bloodline in the Ice Imperial Spear, so he shouldn't have been suppressed by the element of water so much, but his ice-water bloodline and Ice Imperial Spear were currently being used to seal the power of the god blood. Wang tilde. At the critical moment, Zhao Feng released the projection of his little world of wind lightning to fight back against the ocean. Sky-destroying sacred lightning palm. Zhao Feng released a giant scarlet golden palm of lightning by combining his physical strength and mystic light sacred power. The sacred lightning palm instantly flashed with lightning as it landed on the ocean around him and destroyed the element of water. Zhao Feng then used his little world of wind lightning to struggle free, but a golden white beam of light shot toward Zhao Feng at the same time. Boom. Bam. Peng. Zhao Feng circulated his sacred lightning body and used it with the little world of wind lightning to block the attack from this substandard god weapon. Whoosh. Whoosh. The golden white light pierced through the little world of wind lightning's defense, but the remaining power didn't cause much damage when it landed on Zhao Feng. Luckily, these two sacred kings don't have divine power. Zhao Feng felt extremely lucky. No divine power meant that they couldn't unleash the full power of the substandard god weapons, and so Zhao Feng, who had great defense, was able to counterattack. Continue attacking. Sacred King Samsara roared in anger and felt frustrated. The two Sacred King Samsara immortal bodies activated their substandard god weapons once more and attacked Zhao Feng. However, right at this moment, a dark gray light flashed past the two Sacred Kings. You're courting death. The two Sacred Kings sensed this disturbance, and one of them used his substandard god weapon to try to kill the little thieving cat that was trying to ambush them. Whoosh. Ding. The little thieving cat slashed out a ripple of darkness that collided with the golden white pearl of light. Crack. A crack started to appear on the surface of the golden white pearl of light. How is this possible? My substandard god weapon. The Sacred King exclaimed as he looked at the substandard god weapon in his hand. That's impossible. Sacred King Samsara's expression changed dramatically as he looked at this scene in disbelief. How could a legendary substandard god weapon be damaged so easily? Sacred King Samsara then glanced toward the battlefield where the little thieving cat and Sacred Lord myriad forms were fighting. The late-stage mystic light realm Samsara immortal bodies were sliced into countless tiny pieces and recovered very slowly. Could it be a divine weapon? Sacred King Samsara stared at the short black blade in the little thieving cat's paws. One of the main reasons why true god Tianfa could fight against all the experts of the two lord dynasties was because of his two divine weapons. From this, one could see how strong a divine weapon was. Little thieving cat, good job. Zhao Feng exclaimed. After recovering for such a long time, the little thieving cat finally had the ability to use the divine weapon again. However, since the little thieving cat's cultivation wasn't high enough, the Sacred King had sensed the little thieving cat approaching, or else it would have been able to critically damage or completely destroy the substandard god weapon. Meow meow. The little thieving cat signaled to Zhao Feng that it had just used up all the divine power that it could and would be unable to use the divine weapon within a short amount of time. Good, let's fight together. Zhao Feng's battle intent rose. The little thieving cat's strongest attack had broken the stalemate. Besides, even if the little thieving cat didn't actually circulate the divine weapon, the sharpness and other characteristics of the divine weapon itself weren't weaker than normal peak-tier heaven-grade weapons. I'll finish you off first. Zhao Feng looked at the Sacred King whose substandard god weapon was broken. Sacred Lightning Dominating Punch. Zhao Feng circulated his power and unleashed countless scarlet golden punches of lightning as he blocked the path of retreat for this Sacred King. At the same time, the little thieving cat used the divine weapon to heavily injure him. Boom. Peng. The human and cat combination managed to instantly maim this Sacred King. Even though the Sacred King had a Samsara immortal body, damage caused by the power of God Tribulation Lightning and a divine weapon was really hard to recover from. Dark Blue Tsunami. The other Sacred King immediately circulated his substandard God weapon and tried to stop Zhao Feng. Physical Force Lightning Domain. Zhao Feng circulated his of Earth of Wind Lightning Sacred Power and released a powerful domain of lightning and gravity. This domain combined with the power of Zhao Feng's little world of wind lightning and clashed with the waves head-on. Break. Zhao Feng unleashed a sacred lightning palm and easily destroyed this Sacred King's restrictions. Zhao Feng then used the wind lightning eye flame and teamed up with the little thieving cat to kill the heavily injured Sacred King. Humph, he can't die. Sacred King Samsara circulated his left eye in the distance and released a powerful intent of Samsara. The Samsara immortal body that had been completely killed by Zhao Feng started to form again. As long as the Samsara immortal body wasn't completely disintegrated, they could recover. However, once they were completely killed, Sacred King Samsara needed to use his intent of Samsara to revive them. I was waiting for you to revive him. Zhao Feng circulated his scarlet wings of lightning and charged toward Sacred King Samsara. Sacred King Samsara had been maintaining a certain distance from Zhao Feng, and since Zhao Feng had to face two Sacred Kings, he was unable to approach Sacred King Samsara. If this continued, Zhao Feng would be the one to lose. However, at this moment, Zhao Feng teamed up with the little thieving cat and managed to kill one Samsara immortal body. The remaining Sacred King wasn't able to threaten Zhao Feng alone, and Sacred King Samsara was using an eye bloodline technique to revive the dead Sacred King. Thus, Zhao Feng quickly escaped from the other Sacred King and charged directly toward Sacred King Samsara. Not good, I fell into a trap. Sacred King Samsara's expression turned to surprise, and he immediately stopped reviving the dead Sacred King and started to run. His personal battle power wasn't actually very strong, whereas Zhao Feng's soul intent had already reached the level of a Sacred King. As a specialist in the soul, Zhao Feng's soul eye bloodline techniques were very threatening to him. Whoosh! A powerful surge of soul energy and an aura of God Tribulation Lightning appeared from Zhao Feng's left eye. Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame. A ball of God Tribulation Lightning symbols appeared from Zhao Feng's left eye. Each God Tribulation Lightning symbol contained a wisp of soul fire as they turned into dark purple soul flames. Boom. Peng. A twisting ball of burning God Tribulation Lightning symbols landed in Sacred King Samsara's face alongside a terrifying soul aura. Arg. Sacred King Samsara screamed as pain surged through his soul. He felt as if his soul was about to explode. Wang tilde Wang tilde. The dark golden necklace on Sacred King Samsara's neck instantly blinked with a dark light and quickly helped Sacred King Samsara block the soul eye bloodline technique. Wang tilde. The next instant, a powerful surge of God Tribulation Lightning power landed on the necklace. Crack. The golden black necklace on Sacred King Samsara's neck exploded. My soul defending secret treasure. Sacred King Samsara's heart jumped. Even a peak heaven grade soul defending treasure was destroyed by Zhao Feng. From this, one could see how strong his soul eye bloodline technique was. Start of Samsara. Sacred King Samsara quickly unleashed another Samsara eye bloodline technique while running away. The Sacred King Samsara immortal body chasing Zhao Feng started to disappear and suddenly jumped out of Sacred King Samsara's left eye the next instant. The eyes of Samsara. Zhao Feng was slightly speechless. The abilities of the eyes of Samsara were very annoying. Apart from controlling limitless people, they could also give immortal bodies. Now that the eyes of Samsara displayed another ability that allowed Sacred King Samsara to summon someone back into the eyes of Samsara and unleash him again, this basically meant that Sacred King Samsara would always have Samsara immortal bodies protecting him. Once Zhao Feng was stalled by this Sacred King Samsara would be able to escape very far away. However, Sacred King Samsara wasn't at his peak right now, so it was Zhao Feng's best chance to kill him. Once he missed this chance, the eyes of Samsara would be able to create even more Sacred King Samsara immortal bodies, so it would be much harder for Zhao Feng to kill Sacred King Samsara then. I can't let him escape. A strong surge of eye bloodline power shot out from Zhao Feng's left eye and formed a bottomless purple whirlpool that was connected to an endless purple abyss. A forbidden power appeared and started to suck out the soul of this Sacred King. What is this? The Sacred King felt his soul escape his body uncontrollably, and fear filled his eyes. He tried to struggle but was unable to escape the fate of his soul being sucked away. Sacred King Samsara felt his heart shake when he saw Zhao Feng's left eye, as if his soul was going to float out too. I can't resist anymore. A dark blue human-shaped yuan soul slowly left the Sacred King's body. Right at this moment, the little thieving cat turned into a silver-gray streak of light and stole the substandard god weapon from the Sacred King. Good job. Zhao Feng praised. Who? The dark blue human-shaped yuan soul was pulled out by Zhao Feng. The god's spiritual eye had become stronger after the evolution, and since this Sacred King's soul intent was only on par with Zhao Feng's, he obviously couldn't stop Zhao Feng's gaze of the god eye. Shoo! Zhao Feng sucked the Sacred King's soul into the dimension of his left eye. He, idiot. Sacred King Samsara snickered and laughed. Zhao Feng had just seen him summon the Samsara immortal body back, and yet he was still wasting his eye intent to suck away the soul of a Samsara immortal body? Start of Samsara. Sacred King Samsara used the technique once more and prepared to recall the soul and body of that Sacred King, but he froze the next instant. He suddenly realized that he only managed to summon back the body. There was no soul. Sacred King Samsara, you have no more tricks left now, right? Zhao Feng couldn't help but smile coldly. He was very confident in his God Eye dimension. As expected, after the soul was sucked into the dimension of his God Eye, even the Eye of Samsara wasn't able to take it back. Chapter 1120, End of Samsara. How is this possible? Sacred King Samsara's expression changed dramatically. He had never met such a situation before in his life. Without any Samsara immortal bodies protecting him, it would be impossible for Sacred King Samsara to match up against Zhao Feng. If Sacred King Samsara was at his peak, he would have several Sacred Kings and several late-stage Sacred Lords, with countless other mystic light realm experts as well as 2 substandard god weapons. Even demigods wouldn't be able to kill him. Furthermore, Sacred King Samsara had the eyes of Samsara. His ability to survive was very great, or else he wouldn't be alive after offending so many forces from both Lord dynasties. However, fear started to appear in Sacred King Samsara's heart as he looked at Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng, you can't kill me. You already saved Lu Qin and took away that substandard god weapon. Instead of having one more enemy, why not have one more friend? Sacred King Samsara looked at Zhao Feng and said through gritted teeth. Zhao Feng had a cold expression. His killing intent toward Sacred King Samsara didn't decrease at all. It didn't really matter that Sacred King Samsara had tricked him, the main thing was that Sacred King Samsara had lied to Lu Qin and wanted to kill her in order to break through. Zhao Feng couldn't stand this. Lu Qin finally managed to change her fate and obtain new life, but she was almost killed by Sacred King Samsara without even knowing anything? Start of Samsara. Seeing Zhao Feng remain unmoved, Sacred King Samsara used the start of Samsara once more. This time, he summoned back all the other Samsara immortal bodies. The next instant, black figures shot out of Sacred King Samsara's left eye one after another. There were about 80 Samsara immortal bodies, more than 20 were at the Mystic Light Realm, while the rest were all at the Void God Realm. Most of these Samsara immortal bodies were suppressed by the little thieving cat and Sacred Lord myriad forms. Some were fighting against the sky-shaking golden apes, while others had been completing various tasks for Sacred King Samsara elsewhere. Zhao Feng saw the Emperor of Death, as well as Sacred Lord Black Shark, the man who tried to assassinate the 9th prince. A sinful person. Zhao Feng looked at Sacred King Samsara. It was hard to imagine how many experts Sacred King Samsara had killed in his life. At the same time, Zhao Feng instantly went on guard. Although he wasn't scared of these weaklings, Sacred King Samsara wouldn't do something that was completely useless. Restrictions of Samsara. Sacred King Samsara circulated both his eyes and released a powerful surge of Samsara intent, which entered these Samsara immortal bodies. Hoo-hoo. The bodies and souls of the Samsara immortal bodies started to fade away and turn into a dark mist that surrounded Zhao Feng. Damn it, several dozen millennia of hard work. Sacred King Samsara was extremely unwilling to do this. When using the restrictions of Samsara against the enemy, the souls of his Samsara immortal bodies would also be released. Dark Shadow Instant Movement. Sacred King Samsara used a secret technique and turned into a flash of gray light that disappeared into the sky. This power. A dark mist covered the area around Zhao Feng. This dark mist could block everything, including his soul intent and consciousness. Sky-destroying sacred lightning palm. Zhao Feng thrust out a scarlet palm of lightning, but he found that his attack disappeared completely after entering the dark mist. The next instant, a scarlet palm of lightning shot toward Zhao Feng from behind. Zhao Feng immediately circulated his power to block it. The power of samsara doesn't belong to the physical or soul dimensions. It is similar to the power of destiny, a unique power that is hard to touch. Zhao Feng had a grim expression. Humph, then I'll just use absolute power to break everything. Zhao Feng had to kill Sacred King Samsara today. He couldn't allow himself to be trapped here. Zhao Feng raised his right hand and extended the purple and gold-colored finger. This finger was surrounded by faint cold air. Hu tilde. Zhao Feng released part of the seal and pointed out. Boom. Peng. A desolate and strong bloodline divine power turned into a beam of purple and blood-colored light that shot forward and pierced through everything. The dark mist around Zhao Feng was instantly pushed aside. However, Zhao Feng's heart hurt because the attack just now used over 10% of the power from the god blood. Lightning Wings Spatial Flash. Zhao Feng used his sacred power of wind lightning and turned into a streak of scarlet light that disappeared into the sky. Sacred King Samsara was running as fast as he could in the sky. Many experts died in the god corpse. I will be able to create even stronger samsara immortal bodies in the future after I recover. At that point in time, I will definitely turn Zhao Feng and everyone related to him into samsara immortal bodies and never let them enjoy freedom for eternity. Sacred King Samsara felt extremely humiliated and angry. Being the descendant of a god and a sacred king that stood at the peak of the continent, he had never been in such a situation before. However, in the next instant, Sacred King Samsara's body turned cold even though he had already run away for 10,000 miles. It was as if a piercing aura had locked onto him. Shu tilde. A scarlet golden arrow seemed to jump out of space itself as it pierced through Sacred King Samsara's body. What's going on? Sacred King Samsara's expression turned to shock. Boom. 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 A powerful intent of wind lightning crushed toward him. Wind lightning eye flame. The instant Zhao Feng approached, he used an eye bloodline technique. Bam! Whoosh! A purple and gold lightning fire exploded in Sacred King Samsara's face, and the extreme pain made him stop for a moment. You actually managed to escape? Sacred King Samsara's expression lost all color. Zhao Feng had managed to break through his restrictions of samsara in such a short amount of time? Mental energy spike. Soul illusion charge. Seeing that his eye bloodline technique wasn't very effective against Sacred King Samsara, Zhao Feng immediately circulated his eye intent and released some different eye bloodline techniques. Arg. Zhao Feng, treat others the way you want to be treated. Sacred King Samsara was being tortured by Zhao Feng and would be unable to escape, but Zhao Feng's eye bloodline techniques were unable to kill him. Having a samsara immortal body and the eyes of samsara, Sacred King Samsara's defenses and soul recovery speed exceeded the limits of most sacred kings. As expected, he's very hard to kill. While Sacred King Samsara's soul defending capabilities weren't as strong as Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye, his soul recovery speed was very strong. Shu tilde Weng. Weng. Zhao Feng merged the remaining power of God Tribulation Lightning into his left eye. Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame. A ball of God Tribulation Lightning symbols appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye. Each God Tribulation Lightning symbol glittered with a soul flame as it turned into a crystalline purple soul fire. Boom. Peng. A ball of burning God Tribulation Lightning symbols released a terrifying soul aura as it bombarded Sacred King Samsara's head. Arg. Sacred King Samsara screamed out in pain. Right now, he felt like he would rather die. After losing his soul-defending treasure earlier, he was unable to stop the offense of Zhao Feng's God Tribulation Lightning power despite his samsara immortal body's recovery speed. After bearing the attack of the Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame, Sacred King Samsara became very weak. Zhao Feng, spare me, and I will hand over the method of combining the powers of the God Eye descendants. Sacred King Samsara believed that Zhao Feng wouldn't decline this offer. Now that Zhao Feng had Sacred Lord Myriad forms in an Eye of Death, he would only need one more God Eye bloodline in order to use this secret technique on his own. No expert in the continent zone would be able to disobey this power that could destroy heaven and earth. Even though he was bent on killing Sacred King Samsara, Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly for a moment. Humph, die. Zhao Feng's expression was cold. Although he really wanted Sacred King Samsara's secret technique, he was someone that had morals. Those that needed to die would die. Boom. Boom. Zhao Feng kept on using soul-eye bloodline techniques to weaken Sacred King Samsara's soul. If Zhao Feng was facing someone else right now, he could just use the gaze of the God Eye to suck their soul away, but Sacred King Samsara had the eyes of Samsara and a very strong soul intent. If Sacred King Samsara decided to self-destruct in the process, Zhao Feng might be killed since he was so close to the opponent. Arg. Die. Sacred King Samsara's expression contorted as he poured all his soul power, sacred power, and the intent of Samsara into his eyes of Samsara. Boom. Sacred King Samsara compressed his power and released it through the eyes of Samsara. A terrifying wave of power swept across heaven and earth, shattering mountains and destroying rivers. Whoosh. Zhao Feng was already on guard and instantly used the lightning wings flying technique to dodge the explosion's range. Humph, where do you think you're running to? Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye locked onto a certain object and chased after it. He had already sensed that Sacred King Samsara only self-destructed one of the eyes. The eyes of Samsara were split into the Samsara of life and the Samsara of death. The eye that exploded was the Samsara of death, while the eye containing the Samsara of life took part of Sacred King Samsara's soul intent and escaped. Zhao Feng took out the sky-locking bow and shot out several arrows. Whoosh! 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 Scarlet golden wind lightning and surges of soul power landed against the dark soul. Zhao Feng, I admit that you're very strong, but you can't kill me. Sacred King Samsara suddenly said arrogantly after seeing Zhao Feng catch up. Samsara rebirth. Sacred King Samsara's soul intent poured into the eye. Sacred King Samsara was full of hatred and regret. He hated the fact that Zhao Feng had forced him into a situation like this, and he regretted that he offended Zhao Feng. He was now using the last secret technique of the Samsara of life. He would lose everything and be reborn. A sinner like you still wants to reincarnate? Zhao Feng approached and circulated his eye intent. Gaze of the God Eye. An endless purple whirlpool that was connected to a limitless maze appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye. At this moment, Sacred King Samsara's soul intent was very weak. Even if he self-destructed again, he wouldn't be able to cause much damage, so Zhao Feng used the gaze of the God Eye directly. Furthermore, Zhao Feng's gaze of the God Eye was now combined with the forbidden illusion Lost World, so its ability to control and deceive was even stronger. Don't. Sacred King Samsara's soul intent had just entered the Samsara of life and lost all resistance. Shoo. The eye containing the Samsara of life was sucked into the dimension of Zhao Feng's left eye. On the other hand, Sacred King Samsara's feigned soul intent lost its connection with the eye of Samsara of life at the critical moment of reincarnating and failed. His soul intent was then destroyed by the power of Samsara that existed in heaven and earth. So close. Zhao Feng felt lucky. If he was just a step slower, or if the gaze of the God Eye was just a bit weaker, Sacred King Samsara might have successfully reincarnated. Luckily, he managed to kill Sacred King Samsara, and he also obtained the eye containing the Samsara of life. Right at this moment, Zhao Feng's thoughts twitched, and he looked into the distance in a certain direction as he sensed something. A stunning female that seemed to come from a painting was standing in the distance. You killed my master. Lu Qin was in a daze as her eyes became watery, and she was filled with sadness and helplessness.